Good evening to all of you. If you're just getting settled, my name is Brent Stevens. I'm the superintendent of the district. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. We're going to spend about an hour together talking about the just very recently created middle and high school schedules for returning to on-campus learning. This evening, I'm joined by a few of my colleagues. So first, I'd like to introduce Chris Albeck. Mr. Albeck is the principal at Willard Middle School, and thank you for being here. And then we're also joined by Ms. Debbie Dean, who is the director of K-8 schools here in Berkeley Unified and the former principal of Willard Middle School. So Willard is well represented this evening. And then I'd also like to introduce to you Liz Chirez, who is assistant to the Board of Education. She's the one sort of steering the ship this evening. And Liz, thanks so much for giving up time this evening to help us with two back-to-back town halls. We really appreciate it. This evening, we are going to present some information that is now just very recently minted. We've been working over the last several weeks to create return to campus learning schedules for both middle and high school. This includes BTA and BIS as well. Tonight's town hall is going to focus almost exclusively on middle school and on Berkeley High School. Just because of the relative size of those two levels. Information about BTA and BIS will be going out to families who attend those schools from Ms. Weber. I would expect it very, very shortly. This evening, we are planning to do a sort of an interactive town hall. We've prepared what I imagine will be a brief presentation, probably be talking for about 20 minutes or so, just to run through the details of both middle school and high school together. Roughly at the midpoint of this evening's hour, we do welcome taking questions. We'll be doing that in two different ways. So for folks who would like to be able to ask a question live, please know that that's very welcome. And you can do that by raising your Zoom hand. And we will be using Zoom hands in just a little while to ask live questions. You can also drop questions into the Q&A feature of Zoom. We will I'll go back and forth between answering live questions from folks who are raising their hand and then also answering questions in the Q&A. We do really hope that this is an informative hour for you, that you get lots of information about what the schedule will look like. And then we will continue to share more information both from the district, and you can expect additional information coming from your school's principals as they themselves get themselves sort of organized for the specific details of each of their campuses. So with that, I'm going to jump over to share my screen, and we'll begin what will be, I imagine, about a 20-minute presentation to talk through the very recently developed sort of details related to middle and high school return to campus schedules. So here's the ground we'll cover. First, we'll take on middle schools and look at in a fair amount of detail exactly what's going on with our middle school schedule. We'll then jump over to the high school. Again, we'll focus mainly on Berkeley High School. Information about BTA, BTEC, and BIS will be coming mostly through Ms. Weber, through the school's principal. We'll also talk a little bit about COVID safety in our schools, elements of the safety protocols that you can expect to be present when your child returns to campus. And then finally, for what I imagine will be at least half an hour, we'll have questions and discussion. This is the reopening timeline. We've been publishing this timeline now for about 6 weeks. This timeline was really made much more solid through a partnership with the city of Berkeley to provide vaccination appointments to all of our educators and staff. Those vaccination appointments were delivered both through this partnership and through other sources. And the vast majority of our staff and educators are now well on their way to being fully vaccinated. We really do appreciate a great deal the level of patience that the Berkeley community has shared with us as we've taken this extra month or so to be sure that all of our educators have their vaccinations before we reopen at scale. So April 12th is the day right after break where we'll be opening first grades 3 through 5 at the elementary level, not listed here. We'll also be opening all of our middle school grades, that's grades 6 through 8 at all 3 of our campuses, as well as the 9th grade at Berkeley High School and BTA for what will be about 2 weeks of term 7 support. And I'll describe to you what that means in just a few minutes. A week later, on April 19th, we'll sort of finish our campus reopenings with grades 10 through 12 at Berkeley High School. And then on the 26th, a much larger group of students will return for term 8. And so I want to take each of those weeks at the high school somewhat separately because there's a different plan for term 7 and term 8 at the high school. We'll walk through that in some detail tonight. So let's jump into middle schools and we'll look at the schedule. You'll be able to see what's different about it and the ways in which your child, should you choose, will be able to come onto campus. So these roughly are the results so far of the families who are saying that they would like to return to in-person learning. They are at this point identical to the results that we're getting from just broadly across our elementary community. These results are not yet finished, and so we continue to collect in survey information, and we're making calls from schools to be able to collect information from families who have not yet reported. So I hope that you'll please take these numbers with a grain of salt. They may be adjusted as we continue to request more information from families. And then just as we did for elementary survey results, we plan to disaggregate this data and publish it so that you can see both by school and key demographic groups the differences that are emerging in the choices that families are making about returning to campus for these final 2 months of the school year. Here is the, again, brand new, sort of, I'll call it for now, the hybrid or in-person learning schedule for all of our middle schools. And I'd like to walk you through exactly what it will look like. First, for the morning, you can see represented in the pink row, we will continue to maintain intact the distance learning program as students are experiencing it. The reason for this is an important one. We do know that there are families for whom remaining in distance learning isn't even a choice, but really a necessity for a whole variety of reasons, including health concerns, not just concerns about safety, but somebody who is at higher risk of COVID-19. So the distance learning program enables us to serve all students in a way that is intact and not interrupted. There is a modest adjustment to the daily schedule of the distance learning classes. Those classes are moved up by 15 minutes. These are represented just as blocks right now. Your schools will be sending out far more detailed information about the precise schedule. The distance learning morning remains intact for Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, just as it is now, as does Wednesday, where students experience an online advisory. What's very different now about this schedule is that the in-person learning component of the day is now defined between 1 and 3 in the afternoon. And we will be using an A group, B group sort of rotating method to be able to lower the overall density of the population on all of our middle school campuses. So schools will be working on assigning students either to a group A or a group B that will determine which day your child comes to school. And then after school programming is also available that will also correspond to the A group and the B group assigned during that 1 to 3 block of time. For families who are remaining in distance learning, there will be some additional supplemental online activities taking place as well. These will be somewhat limited, but do know that there will be some additional small group support for students who will be remaining online. To look now at the block of time between 1 and 3 o'clock in the afternoon. All of these afternoon classes will be taught by middle school teachers and staff. So these are the very same teachers that you're accustomed to seeing both online and that we all knew prior to the pandemic. Our teachers will be essentially preparing a set of what we imagine to be engaging and enriching lessons. These will consist of both academic instruction, advisory lessons, enrichment, and academic support. In effect, what will happen on middle school campuses is that students will be grouped into a single cohort of students. The cohort will be about 12 to 15 students. That group will then participate together in a rotation of different activities. Each school will be preparing its own activities. They'll be slightly different depending on whether you attend Longfellow, Willard, or King. And each school community, each set of teachers is essentially preparing for this 2-hour block in ways that are both sort of similar and a bit different across all of the campuses. But what happens in this is essentially that the group will be rotating between teachers so that the teachers may change, but the group of students will remain intact. This cohorting strategy is one of a number of health precautions that we will be exercising as students return to campus. And we'll talk a little bit more about those sort of mitigation strategies in a few minutes. And then again, as I've said a few times, you'll be receiving more information from your child's middle school about the sort of precise programming to take place in the afternoon block of time. There will be modest arrival and dismissal times staggering to prevent a large number of students from showing up at exactly the same moment. We will be asking all of our families to complete a daily symptom screener. This is a very easy to use Google form that we wound up creating after trying out a couple of commercially available apps. We're using this Google form at the elementary level, and so far so good. I think most people are finding it fairly straightforward. Please know that as we begin to welcome our students back on campus, that we won't be able to permit parents, guardians, and other visitors to come onto campus, with the exception of a very limited set of volunteer roles to be designated by each school. Do also know that face coverings will be required for all students, and that's true for all staff as well. That will be at all times with the exception of eating. And there is an exemption process available to families whose child may have some sort of medical condition that would prevent the use of a face covering. So you can reach out to your school to learn more about that exemption process. It's also the case that our special education case managers will be aware of that exemption process too. And then do know at some schools, some of our teachers may continue to work in distance learning. At the middle school level, there are generally far fewer of our teachers working from home, but that could be the case, and there could be some sort of modest changes to the sort of personnel who are familiar to all of us as we're talking about the afternoon. Let me check in with my co-panelists to go over to Mr. Albeck and Ms. Dean. So far, so good. Have I did anything that I may have left off so far?
No, it seems like there's a lot of interest in the high school. Not to rush you, Dr. Stevens. I'm just reading the questions in the chat.
Great. Sounds good. Well, we'll definitely continue on with that. There will be the LEARNS program is available at our middle schools, and that is also true for BTA. We've included some contact information if you would like to learn about available seats in the LEARNS program at our middle schools. There you've got the website that will take you to information about our LEARNS program, and you're welcome to reach out to Erin Jorgensen, who is the program manager for our LEARNS After School program. Please do know that space will be limited. We will be running just a slightly reduced capacity for all of our after-school programs, but we do encourage you to inquire if you're interested in extending your child's time on campus by looking into our LEARNS option. We are also working on bus transportation for middle school students. We recognize that the AM/PM model with students traveling in the middle of the day may not work for many families. That's because of work schedules. That's because our middle school students are younger. Don't believe that we'll be in a position to offer transportation to all of our middle school students, but do know that we are making special arrangements to be able to offer transportation seats to middle school families who are challenged. At this point, we plan to allow our middle schools to manage the transportation requests to central office. That is, our middle schools will be looking for particular cases where families are struggling, and we'll be making those requests on behalf of families. We don't plan to put out a survey or an application process to all families. And that again is because of the limited nature of transportation. And then do know that there will be transportation, as there always is, for students who have individual education plans. Transportation requests are managed by your child's case manager. And if you have any question at all about special education transportation, please do reach out to your special education teacher for more information about that. So with that, we're going to jump over to Berkeley High School. I'll touch a little bit on BTech, but most of the presentation, just because of its scale, will focus on Berkeley High School. Let's jump in. So Berkeley High School will be reopening in a staggered manner in the following way, and I'm going to take some time to explain each one of these, both as I narrate this slide and as we go on to look at coming slides. So first, on April 12th, ninth graders at Berkeley High School and BTech will be invited by their teachers to return for Term 7 support. I'll talk a little bit about term 7 in a moment. On April 19th, students in grades 10 through 12 at Berkeley High School will also be invited by their teachers to return to campus in the afternoons for term 7 support. And these 2 weeks, the week of April 12th and the week of April 19th, are the final 2 weeks of our 7th term in our sort of 8-term system at Berkeley High School. During these 2 weeks, if a student is invited to come onto campus in the afternoon, it will be because a teacher has reached out. Teachers will be seeking kids who need additional attention to complete work, who need additional study time, or support to be able to prepare for finals taking place at the school during the week of April 19th. This will be a selected set of students who begin to come onto Berkeley High School's campus from April 12th to the 19th, but every one of our Berkeley High School teachers will be participating. And so this is going to dramatically expand the number of students who are on our campus. We already have actually several hundred who are coming to campus somewhat regularly now. And this will be taking place throughout this 2-week period. Beginning on April 26, which is when term 8 begins, that's when all students will have an opportunity, should they choose, to return for on-campus learning in the afternoons at the high school. And we'll take a look at the schedule for what term 8 will look like right now. So first, let's take a look at this 2-week period for term 7. Again, this is a period between April 12th and April 23rd. It's a 2-week period of time. 9th graders are invited to attend for those 2 weeks. 10th through 12th graders will be invited to attend from the April 19th through the 23rd. Again, term 7 support will be selected students who are in need of additional teacher attention as they finish up their term 7 work and prepare for their finals. During these 2 weeks, distance learning will remain mostly as it is. The distance learning schedule will be adjusted just by a little bit, only by a few minutes. We begin class at 8:55, starting on April 12th. And periods 1, 3, and 5 will take place online up until 12:15 in the afternoon. From 12:15 to 2 o'clock, this will be a period both for students to have their lunch or come to campus to get lunch, as well as transitioning from home over to campus. From 2 to 3:30 in the afternoon, teachers will be reaching out to students to invite them to come in for this term 7 support. Again, this is a selected number of students based on a number of criteria that include attendance issues, needing help with work, or just sort of general concerns that a teacher may have about a student's ability to complete term 7 work. Each teacher will be making about 15 invitations, and so group size, I would imagine, will go anywhere from about 10 to 15 students per teacher across the entire school. Then on April 26th and moving all the way to June 4th, the final term of the school year, any student who would like to will have the opportunity to come back to class. This will be in the afternoon block, much like it is during the term 7 support and much like it is for the middle school model. From 8:55 to 12:15 in the morning, online classes will take place just as they have in the past. This will involve, now for term 8, periods 2, 4, and 6 classes. These are the classes students have been enrolled in all year long. 12:15 to 2 o'clock will be the same lunch and transition break as students move from home to campus and go through our screening stations. And then from 2 to 3:30, students will be able to attend at least 2 in-person classes per week. Each class will last 90 minutes. That's 2 to 3:30, excuse me. And they will correspond to the classes that students are enrolled in for term 8. So that is, if a student is enrolled in math for period 2, they would come on campus for math support with their same teacher in correspondence with their period 2 class. If they have a history class in period 4, same thing. The next time they come on campus would be to take that period 4 history class with the same teacher. Teachers may be combining some of their classes together, but a student can expect that they will have an opportunity to go on campus and experience that particular class, the one they've been studying in remotely all year long, with their teacher and with their same classmates. Some students may be able to attend an additional class, and it may be the case that some can even attend one beyond that. And the reason that there's some variability here is that we're going to be dividing our teachers into basically an A group and a B group. That is to be able to reduce the overall population density on campus. So in any given day, we'd have about half of our students attending school on the BHS campus. During the first 2 afternoons of the week, all students who are taking classes with teacher A would be attending for the Monday and Tuesday. All students who are taking classes with teachers designated as being a part of group B would then be taking their classes on Thursday and Friday. Wednesdays during our Berkeley High School schedule will continue to be devoted to equity-based small group instruction. This will be happening online. This has been, for our teachers, a very important element of their work to support students through this pandemic, and that will continue through the final term of the school year. Berkeley High School will be distributing more information about exactly how all of this will work. And just about an hour or so ago, I sent a message out to all middle and high school families, and that message included an enrollment form for high school students so that they could indicate both that they would like to return to campus and as well so that they could indicate in order of preference the period 2, 4, or 6 class that they would like to attend in person. I just reviewed this, so let me talk a little bit about the enrollment survey. So linked in the letter today that just went out about an hour ago, high school families will find an enrollment form. That enrollment form contains all of the information that I just walked through about the particular schedule for this sort of hybrid model. Students who choose to come onto campus will be able to attend at least 2 classes. That is because at least 2 of their teachers will be in that group A configuration. And some students may be able to attend a 3rd class if they happen to have a teacher who is then in group B. Students will be asked to select which periods they most prefer to attend. So their first choice class, their second choice class, their third choice class, and of course a student can indicate that they would like to attend all of their classes in person. That's perfectly possible. The enrollment form is due back to us. We ask no later than Sunday of this weekend, that is April 4th. That gives families a week to talk with their students about returning, to assess whether or not they would like to return, and then submit to us both their indication that they'd like to come back and which classes they would like to attend in person. Let's talk a little bit about some additional information about both our middle and high schools. There's some things that our secondary schools share in common. So first, much like we did at the elementary level just last week, both our middle school and our high school will have a number of campus preparation days. These are days in which distance learning will be limited, mostly just to a single online class. This gives all of our staff, all of our educators an opportunity to be on campus, both to complete in-person training to be oriented to the various safety procedures now in place on their campus, and as well to get their classrooms set up and to do some sort of light collaboration inside of their teams. So for the middle school, these particular campus preparation days look a little bit different than they did at the elementary, and they're different than the high school. So first, last week and again tomorrow, Wednesday will consist only of the advisory class, which is scheduled at 9:15 in the morning. And then all small group online supports will be canceled for the day. These are, again, days that our educators are on campus preparing for the return of students. On Monday, March 29th, that was this week, you may have noticed that the morning advisory class was canceled. And then at the end of this week, Thursday and Friday, that's April 1st and 2nd, will consist only of advisory classes at 9:15, and all Zoom classes will be replaced with independent assignments. It's really these 2 days that our educators will be using to get all of their training and campus preparations completed. At the high school, the preparation days are just a little bit sort of less intensive. They include on tomorrow, Wednesday, March 31st, that there will be no U9 small groups. And then on Wednesday, April 14th, after break, there will also be no small groups for students in grades 10 through 12 as well. And those are the campus preparation days for our high school educators. If your child needs a meal, please know that our meal service continues to function just as we have throughout the pandemic. We will have grab and go meals available at all of our campuses. Please do know that that will be true. It is, of course, acceptable if your child eats before they come to campus in the afternoon, but do know that lunch will be available. That will also be true for students staying in the after-school programs. Berkeley School Fund's Ed Hub continues to be operational. For families interested in learning more, please do check the website. You've got I believe that it's here. No, it's not, but you can go on to Schools Fund, Berkeley Schools Fund, their website, and learn more about how to access the Ed Hub. So they will be continuing to distribute school supplies for students who need them for in-person learning, and that's also true for families who are choosing to remain in distance learning. The Ed Hub is a volunteer-run organization. It's led by Berkeley Schools Fund. It's been a real difference maker here in the Berkeley community for such a long time. They operate on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 3 to 5 at the back parking lot of Berkeley Adult School. That's sort of around the back off of San Pablo Avenue. We will continue to make available updated plans related to middle and high school reopening. If you check our website, there you will find something called the District's School Reopening Plan. That plan is about 40 pages and includes highly detailed information about a whole variety of mitigation strategies that will be put in place on all of our campuses. And then also to be posted by Friday of this week are the middle and high school individualized reopening plans. And these particular sort of appendices to the district plan will include specific arrival and dismissal times, indications about where to enter and exit campus, information about the daily symptom screening requirements, classroom setup, particular space designations on some of our campuses, particularly middle school campuses, how lunch and recess works. There's information there about specific ventilation systems on all of our campuses, as well as designated locations for after-school programs. As some folks may be interested to know exactly what's going on inside of classrooms and how are teachers being guided to set up their classrooms. These are the precise sort of instructions given to our educators as they set up their classrooms. And this essentially is sort of a series of if-then statements that we ask our educators to complete as they're setting up their own instructional spaces. First, teachers are being asked to attempt to set up their classrooms with 6 feet of distancing. If that does not work, meaning that students who would like to attend are not able to be accommodated in that space, then educators are asked to drop down to 4 feet. We are well aware of the recently modified CDC and CDPH guidelines about 3 feet of distancing, and we're engaging with our labor partners about what that means for Berkeley. Partitions will be available upon request. As well, we're also guiding our educators to keep their windows open whenever possible, and all of our classrooms have been equipped with a HEPA air purifier. In all of our campuses that have air handling systems, HVAC systems, all filters have been upgraded to MERV 13 or higher quality. And then for families who have students with disabilities, first I'd like to say that we are hosting a town hall on Thursday at 6 o'clock, where we will review this information and other details, specifically about special education services at our middle and high school. And you're very welcome to join me and Executive Director of Special Education, Sean Mansiger, for that town hall. That's Thursday of this week at 6 o'clock. In general, our special education teachers will be serving both students in person and those who are choosing to stay at home for a whole variety of reasons. Here you can see some of the guidance that we're giving our special education teachers as they work on campus. That includes working with students from only one stable group at a time. That includes cleaning any instructional space that may be used by students from different groups. They will be asked to maximize their time outside to the extent that that's both practical and can sort of serve privacy purposes. We'll ask them as well, if it's possible, to maintain more than 6 feet of distancing because these teachers are moving from group to group to group. And then we may see that some of our special education teachers elect to continue providing some services through virtual learning, even if the students are on campus. Our special education teachers right now are busy rewriting their service schedules. This is a complicated task, and so lots of them will be in touch with you about modifications that they'll be making to the particular service schedule for them and for your children. And I did mention already our website. This gives you a sense of what it looks like. We do really encourage you to pop over to it where you'll find all kinds of information about the enrollment process, about our safety plans, and sort of very particular schedules related to campus reopening. We're getting just to the end. These are some of the key safety practices. I know that lots of you are familiar with them. I won't dwell on them for very long, but do know that it is the combination of these risk mitigation practices that all of our campuses will use. And it is these practices in combination that leads us to feel with a great degree of confidence that we're creating a safe learning environment for all students and all of our staff. Shortly, we're going to be distributing information to all of our families about offering COVID-19 student testing. These sort of among the many sort of mitigation strategies that we are working to put in place include periodic asymptomatic testing for not only our staff, but also students. This will be a free test to all students. It will take place on our campuses. And we have a team of nurses, both with PMH labs and our own folks, who will be moving from campus to implement a student testing program. We do ask that all of our families participate. The more folks who participate, the better we will be at detecting potential outbreaks and preventing potential outbreaks. We do ask you to keep in mind as we return to campus that all of our students as well as staff will be expected to wear face coverings, except those who have an exemption. Please do know that contact tracing and isolation and quarantine procedures will be strictly enforced. And this could result in some disruption to in-person learning, whether that's disruption for individual student or classes or small groups, or potentially even for an entire school. We must take these procedures very seriously. We're committed to working closely with the City of Berkeley Public Health Department to ensure that they're in place. But we ask that you keep in mind that in the event that we do have a positive case on our campus, that we'll be following all of the guidance from the state. We do ask that every single family or for older students, that students themselves confirm every single day using our health app that they're free of COVID symptoms. We ask that students remain at home if they are sick or have COVID symptoms. Remember that volunteers will not be allowed in our campuses and classrooms with a very few limited exceptions. And then we also ask you to keep in mind that substitute staffing is going to be highly limited in the short term. This means that we will struggle to have substitutes both for distance learning environment as well as for the on-campus environment. We're not unique among California districts to be really struggling to recruit substitute staffing. And then please remember the pandemic is not over. We're really happy to be taking these steps together to finish out the school year, but we're really going to need each other, both to provide reminders, to stay patient and kind with one another, and then as well to sort of manage each other's nerves as we all learn to implement these new practices on campuses. And finally, to talk a little bit about the fall. Just last week, the Board of Education gave very clear and unanimous direction to me and all of us central office staff members that we should be planning for a full return in the fall. That return should essentially hew to all of our pre-existing pre-pandemic labor contracts. And that we will make special arrangements for families who request distance learning should they be needed as we sort of get through the summer and approach the new school year in August. So my thanks to all of you. We're so appreciative of the Berkeley community, of all of our educators and our students. This has been a long and difficult year, and it does now feel like we're at a moment of hope as we sort of emerge from distance learning and begin these first steps towards a full reopening. I do recognize that this hybrid model is disappointing to many families who are hoping for a more robust or even a full return to on-campus learning for our secondary students. And we're committed to continuing to work to expand those on-campus learning opportunities for students, including during the morning hours. Special gratitude to all of our labor partners, to our partners in the city of Berkeley, and then to all of the volunteers over the course of this pandemic who have just done so many countless small things, big things, to really pull the community together and to support our most vulnerable families through this really difficult time. So with that, we're going to stop. I appreciate you hanging in there through all this information. I know that it was a lot. We're going to begin for the rest of the hour that we have together just to check in on questions. I know that I can see a large number of written questions in the Q&A, and then I'll stop sharing my screen. At that point, I'll be able to see the number of folks who have raised hands, and we'll spend half an hour in dialogue, just talking through these questions. I'll invite my colleagues, Ms. Dean and Mr. Albeck, to comment when they'd like to. Just to be able to sort of color in any information that I may miss as I'm beginning to respond to these questions. So with that, why don't we jump in? And I wonder, Liz, if we could first go to a written question, and then we'll jump over and begin to talk with folks who have their hands raised.
Of course. Let's see. In your email sent today, you mentioned that for middle school students, distance learning classes will remain in the morning on the current schedule. Can you please clarify the schedule? I believe that they finish at 11:50 and have an hour break before beginning in-person class in the afternoon at 1 p.m.
I can, yeah. In fact, I think we made an error in our letter. This may be the first of a few that we commit. And I do understand there's been a modest change to the middle school schedule. And I wonder, I might phone a friend on this one because I just don't have the hours at the top of my head.
So, Dr.
yeah.
Stevens, I think I have them. So for the middle school, the mornings will start in distance learning at 9 a.m. and they'll go till 11:50 a.m. on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. On Wednesdays, there will be a 30-minute advisory that's in distance learning, and that is from 9 till 9:30. On Mondays and Tuesdays in person, it will be Group A, and they will be invited back to campuses from 1 p.m. till 3 p.m. And on Thursday and Friday, it's 1 p.m. till 3 p.m. in person for Group B. Now, music will stay in distance learning. And I know that there's that afternoon jazz class, jazz music class, and I will have to get clarification for you on what time that will be because that'll remain in distance learning. But if your student is on campus, it might be in the middle of it. So I'm just trying to clarify that with Mr. Gidlin right now.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Ms. Dean. Liz, why don't we go over to the first person who has their hand raised, and I see that's Mati Tablum.
Hello. Thank you for taking my question. I agree with you. Can you hear me?
Yes, just fine. Good evening to you.
And I agree with you that it's a big disappointment to many in this community that this is what we receive as a hybrid model learning schedule after all what this community has been through and at the current status of the pandemic and the direction from health authorities nationwide, schools around us, and still Berkeley is far bringing up the rear of reopening. You know, my truck is on gasoline. The windshield wiper is electric. It's not advertised as hybrid. And I would encourage you not to use that that name. It's just an insult to so many. This is an afternoon school-sponsored activities for some students who want to come or can come. My question is about the fall. My question is, how and why should we trust that when you and the board state a commitment, we can actually reasonably expect to have our children going to school 5 days a week in late August? Would you bet your money on it? because we're betting our children's futures on this and have been for over a year. This cannot be another disappointment, another commitment that's missed. I mean, the dates on this reopening have been missed. It's already the 26th of April, actually, the reopening, et cetera. We need, this community needs a strong
Mr.
commitment.
Tablum, I know there's a lot of people who'd like to speak.
That's it.
Why don't I jump into your
That's the end of my question.
Okay.
I'm asking about the reopening in fall. How can we actually trust that this is going to happen?
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I appreciate you being here. So why don't I jump in just to talk a little bit both about sort of, the underlying rationale for this 2-month long, what I'll describe as the sort of mixed methods, both on-campus learning and remote learning. So there were a number of things for us, particularly at the high school level, although this is also true of the middle school. And Liz, would you mind muting Mr. Tablum? Thank you. There were a number of things about the sort of more complicated secondary schedule that just prevented the kind of 5-day return that I know many families were hoping for, that we were able to accomplish at the elementary level. They included both the complicated sort of secondary schedule. At the high school, we have potentially thousands of unique student schedules that would have to be sort of reconceived of as both distance learning and on-campus learning. We also know that there's a higher percentage, about a quarter of our families right now, indicating at the high school, for example, that they will likely not return, and for whom we owe the same level of education. So these few things together, in combination with the just sort of overall population density at the high school, led us ultimately to select this particular model. And I do want to acknowledge that for many families who were hoping for more, there is real disappointment. I both mark it and feel that myself. And we hope that we're finding that balance between both the students who want to come to campus and those who, for many reasons, will not be able to. Looking ahead at the fall, I think that there's a number of reasons to be very optimistic. And that includes what we can see as very positive trend rates in community transmission, positive trend rates as they relate to vaccines, ongoing revisions of guidance as it relates to elements of our health practices like social distancing, all of which are drawing from a sort of broad corpus of data and that lend, I think, anybody who reads them a level of confidence. By signaling that we're planning to return to our pre-existing, pre-pandemic labor agreements. In effect, what we're doing is tolling all of those agreements that we have had for so long. All of those things revert automatically to their sort of the status quo prior to the pandemic. And we do feel that sort of given positive trend rates, trend lines with the pandemic, along with existing agreements pre-pandemic, that those things together give us a very high level of confidence about what school is going to look like. We will also sort of begin the construction of a distance learning program that will provide, I imagine, a much smaller option for families who will look for that in August. And that will then let us devote our staff resources to a return to on-campus learning, something right now which has just been very difficult for us to accomplish, given that we made a number of critical commitments way back in August of last year. So I appreciate the question. We're going to continue to press on. Let's go to another written question. And Liz, if you have found one.
Dr. Stevens, can I jump in? I have an update about jazz band for middle school.
Thank you very much.
So jazz band for middle school will be from 3:15 to 4 o'clock. And if your student is in the A group, jazz band will be when the B group is meeting. If your student is in the B group, jazz band will be when the A group is meeting. So the day, it'll either be on I'm not sure what day it'll be on a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, or Friday. And the jazz band teacher will get you that information, but the jazz band will be intact in the afternoon, 3:15 to 4.
Thank you very much. Liz, do we have another written question that we can do? And then we'll pop back over to a live question.
Yes, let's see. Are you considering offering on-campus high school vaccinations when California allows 16-year-olds to be vaccinated?
That's a really interesting question. So in our discussions with City of Berkeley so far, we have not yet got to the topic of on-campus vaccinations for students. We have always signaled in public to our city partners excuse me, that we'd be very interested in using our campuses in any way possible that contributes to the vaccination effort. So it's nothing that I could commit to at this point, but if it came to be a possibility, Berkeley Unify would be really interested in helping out in any way we can. And then let's jump over to another one of our folks who's got their hands raised. And Liz, why don't you just go to the next caller, please? And I think I've now got Rudy Cipollone.
Hi again, and thank you. This is Rudy's mom. My name is Val. Rudy is a sophomore at Berkeley High.
Thanks for being here tonight.
You're welcome. So I agree with Mati. This is a real disappointment. It seems to me that you are sacrificing so much. You are sacrificing decency and your obligation to the 75% of students and families who are desperate to return to campus in a meaningful way for the sake of 25%. That doesn't seem at all equitable by any measure. I do not support that cohorting and stable groups is necessary. We are now in the orange tier. Further, I saw via parent friends in the Piedmont School District, a letter of commitment for opening again in the fall that was also signed by their labor partners. We want something in writing. We don't want promises. We don't want indications. We need your signature. We need your labor partner signature. Our children, they're young kids. You know, that we expect so much more from you guys. So much more. Thank you.
Thank you, Val. And I do, I know that you've been sort of, frequently writing, and I do really appreciate how engaged you've been over the course of these many months. Why don't we talk a little bit again about the fall? I do know that lots of folks are looking for firm commitment for the fall. We're doing absolutely everything we can to provide it, including, making a signal both to our labor partners and to the community that we're intending to revert back to all of our previous pre-pandemic agreements. And that is a relatively simple matter. It's just a matter of letting our current pandemic agreements expire such that the previous agreements go back into effect. And by sending that signal, what we hope to do is both lend confidence to the community and to let people know that we already have this plan in place. We don't need to renegotiate or rebargain a school schedule that we were accustomed to previous to the pandemic. Liz, why don't we jump over to another written question and then we'll go again to a live caller.
Given the very limited amount of on-campus time, what plan is in place right now to extend mental health support for students to recover from the previous and adjust to this next phase of pandemic life?
That's a great question. So several things. First, all of our schools, this includes Berkeley High School through its partnership with the City of Berkeley and its health center, and all of our middle schools, do have in place contracts with private mental health providers. For families who are seeking services, I really do encourage you to reach out to the counselor, reach out to the administrative team. We're also in conversations with the City of Berkeley to be able to expand mental health programming at our campuses. We hope very much to be able to partner with them. And we're also conducting sort of a needs map, working with our school sites through our Director of Student Services to be able to determine where our gaps are, to be able to provide added mental health supports, both now and we imagine over the course of this coming school year as students make their way back to our campuses. Let me just check in, Mr. Albeck, Ms. Dean, anything to add so far? Doing okay? That's great. So Liz, why don't we jump over to another live caller, please? And I think we're going to Bill Flag, and pardon me if I haven't pronounced your last name correctly.
No worries. So I actually echo the sentiments of the previous folks, but I'm gonna just ask a practical clarifying question given the terms that we are stuck with. And to Liz, this is also in a written question, so you can skip over that. I'm not at all clear what we're supposed to enroll by Sunday for our high schoolers, but I'm not clear what the classwork entails. So in other words, if the virtual only coursework is enough for virtual only students and therefore the quote unquote full curriculum for the term, and then some students will be getting additional class time in the school, but not all three of the classes, just two of the three. It's hard to understand, besides sitting in a chair and being with the teacher and peers, what's actually going to be occurring then. And given the complexities of our work days and getting the kids to and from, as much as I would like my student to be there full-time 5 days a week, I'm not clear what we're choosing here, and I don't know how we would make that choice with the information we have today.
Sure, it's a really good question. Why don't, because we do have folks who are listening in both from the middle school and from the high school. Maybe we'll first just sort of pick up the question about what middle school students will be experiencing when they come to campus, and what's the sort of rationale that a family might sort of choose to have their child attend at the middle school. And then I'll jump over to the high school and offer some view of what a student would be experiencing in their classes.
So Mr. Allback, I know you've put a lot of effort into the afternoon, so why don't you take that question, please?
Sure. So our frame for the afternoon is really how can we make this afternoon an experience where the students feel joyful, where the students feel fulfilled, and where the students really want to come back. So at Willard Middle School, it's a combination of both social emotional and an academic experience. So for the first 30 minutes at Willard Middle School, all students will be participating in their advisory lessons, which is the social emotional curriculum that we develop by Willard teachers for Willard students. And it's really going to be tailored towards, coming back to school after a pandemic. So really having conversations about what it's been like and what are the implications and what does it feel like back here at school site, and what kind of things should we be talking about and thinking about to make sure it's a really safe and comfortable environment for the kids. And after that, we're going to be going into an academic support period where students are really going to have an opportunity to dive into those Google Classrooms and check in on any assignments that they might be behind on or assignments that they weren't understanding. And the teacher is going to be there to be providing them some of the pre-teaching and the reteaching to really support them on their academics. And then following that, at Willard, we're going to be going through an enrichment rotation where students, while remaining in their advisory cohorts, are being exposed to several different teachers from core disciplines. Will they be receiving lessons and activities that, again, are not necessarily directly related to the morning core curriculum, but in turn are really just experiences where students are learning a lot within the academics of math, science, English, history, physical education, and electives. And at the same time, really building that social, emotional, and connective tissue that a lot of the kids have been lacking for the last year. So that's what the afternoons would look like at the middle school level.
Yeah, and I would expand that to say that Longfellow and King are doing very similar programs. And the advisory is something that there's been a collective effort among the 3 middle schools to create advisory lessons for all of our students in middle school.
And at the high school, be a little bit different. Each of our academic teachers will be designing the 90-minute courses that they'll be offering in person. So this is, a fair amount time more than a typical class period. Each of these teachers will be, I imagine, thinking about a combination of enrichment within the curriculum, so going deeper into particular topics, being able to support and reinforce concepts that are being taught during the morning, as well as providing tutoring, small group activities, opportunities to present on learning that's being covered in the morning. I would expect a range of academic activities, and each teacher, depending on the discipline, will be designing that particular academic course to match what's going on really in real time with the distance learning class taking place in the morning. Why don't we jump over to one more written question, and then given the hour, I think we'll probably finish with a final live question. We'll end at 7 o'clock, and then at 7:30, we'll be doing another town hall, this exclusively in Spanish for our Spanish-speaking families. So Liz, we'll jump back over to you and look at one more written question, one more live question.
This question has come up a number of times. Will high school students keep their same teachers?
They will, yes, I appreciate that question. So if a high school student is choosing to come on campus for these classes, these will be exactly the same classes they're enrolled in this year, and they will be taught by their same teachers. There may be a very, very limited number of exceptions to those cases, and that would have to do with when a staff member has been working with our human resources department to be able to stay at home because of a pre-existing condition. But those are few and far between. And in the vast majority of cases, students would be coming on to work with their very same teacher that they're working with in the morning during distance learning. And then over to our final live question of the evening, and I think that this is Kristen Takakua. Hi, Ms. Takakua, are you there? It looks like you just need to unmute yourself.
That was a mistake. I apologize. I didn't have any questions for you. Sorry about that.
No problem at all. Why don't we take another live question, and thanks for being here. And we're going to Pat. Hi there, Pat.
Hi, thank you. I have a middle schooler and a high schooler. And my question is, given the fact that we're just now having middle school and high school go back to some form of live school, and the return to school is right around the corner. In places like Marin, where middle and high school students are now transitioning to 5 full days, they had several months to sort of practice and get used to changes in hybrid. So my question is, why not have, or has there been any thought given to returning students, at least by grade, so that there's an experience of having more students at Berkeley High to sort of trial run what the fall might be? I think from my perspective, it would give me a lot more confidence that BHS was prepared to open fully for all students if there was a larger cohort that was prepared to be in the school at that time. I would also say that my son is a freshman. His only experience at Berkeley High has been sitting in the overview while he was a middle schooler, and he doesn't even know who his principal is. So having at least the grades participate together for at least one week on campus feels like it would also address some of their social emotional needs, as well as help sort of dry run what it will be like to have a lot more students on campus. So I would appreciate hearing your thoughts on that. And then also, since there isn't a dry run, what about the challenges that you're going to pick up during this period? How will we know how they'll be addressed? Because I guess my deep concern is, there'll be some kind of a learning from this period, and then all of a sudden we'll get a communication over the summer that, oh, sorry, we need to do another trial run. We need to stage things out differently. So if you can respond to that,
Sure.
I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, that's a really thoughtful question. So there's a number of things that here in Berkeley also sort of represent this stepwise increasing of students on campus. And I'll focus specifically on Berkeley High School because it's far and away the most complicated institution in Berkeley Unified. So we have for a number of months been operating our athletic conditioning program. Several hundred students have been participating in that program now for a while. We've been running now a small cohort-based program at Berkeley High School for the better part of a month. And there are upwards of about 400 students participating in a variety of cohorted experiences, being led by about 40 to 50 teachers at Berkeley High School. Each of these two sort of incremental returns to campus has been really instructive for us, for the Berkeley High School administrative team, including working out details of how students come onto campus, thinking about various health and safety protocols, and even facilities preparation. As we move into this 2-week term 7 support, we will now have all of our roughly 130 educators selecting about 10 to 15 students each to bring them onto campus. That represents incrementally a far larger number of students. And then just 2 weeks later, on April 26th, we'll be returning about 50% of students to the campus at a time. So I would expect well over 1,000 students on the Berkeley High School campus as we sort of close out the year. All of these have been very instructive experiences. There's nothing about our work so far that lets me think that we may need to go back and re-engineer our return. And I simply don't see that, by sort of moving towards the 50% model, that we will preclude our ability to open up fully as we come back from August. I think that we're supporting that ability, but definitely not turning it off. Folks, we're now at the 7 o'clock hour. I know that there's lots of people who have their hands raised. I know lots of people are sort of eager for information. I'm very grateful to all of the families who have spent an hour with us this evening, just learning more about these very recently created schedules. Please do look out for more information from your school with specific times and the way that all of these general schedules will be made to work at your child's school. Please do expect that information is forthcoming, and I imagine will be ongoing. We will continue to host additional town halls. That includes one taking place in Spanish in just half an hour. There's a town hall at 6 o'clock on Thursday for families of students with disabilities. And then at 7:30, also on Thursday of this week, we're hosting another town hall gathering for Black and African American families who attend either our middle schools or high school. So we do encourage you to continue to tune in, and then as the need arises, we'll continue to make available these community sessions to everybody in Berkeley. I'm very grateful to all of our educators, all of our administrative team for the work that they've done to get us to this point. Although it is disappointing to many, it is, I think, a great sign of optimism for all of us that we are finally moving from one period of this pandemic and into the next. And all of us, I think, looking forward with great anticipation to other things to come. Mr. Albeck, thank you to you for your time this evening. Ms. Dean, thank you very much. Really appreciate you being here. Liz, for your work behind the scenes to make all of this happen. Thank you all. And again, thank you to everyone who spent the hour with us, and we hope to be able to see you very soon. Please have a good night and take care.
Thank you, Dr. Stevens.